Donald Trump addresses a joint session of Congress saying Jim Crow is back. Let's jump into a special edition of The Pit. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Social Pit Podcast for Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. Now, last night, Donald Trump addressed a joint session of Congress announcing that Jim Crow is back. Now, he didn't use the exact words Jim Crow, but his ideologies is bringing back the Jim Crow days of Make America Great Again. Some of the issues that he had discussed was denouncing trans rights, transgender care, and a lot of things for the LGBT plus community. Donald Trump praised the efficiency of a South African national trying to overtake our government at the highest level in the name of Elon Musk and Doge. He announced that there were a lot of drastic cuts that Doge had found, but in reality, when you go to look at the website for Doge, you notice that there's been a lot of changes over the past couple weeks. There's a lot of zeros missing from the fundings that they have discovered where they cut. And what Donald Trump failed to acknowledge during his address to the joint session of Congress was that he is still a very partisan politician and will remain so for the future of this country. Donald Trump also showed his arrogance in this joint session by having Representative Al Green removed from Congress for having to speak out against the BS that Donald Trump was spouting during this speech. Now, as we remember, when President Biden addressed the joint sessions of Congress, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene would make a mockery of President Biden's speech by spouting liar or walking around with a balloon. At one point, she was wearing graffiti-laid clothing and stood up screaming at President Biden. And the second a Democrat stood up to contradict Donald Trump and his bullshit, Speaker Mike Johnson demands the Sergeant of Arms to have him removed from the chamber. Now, this, in essence, quite honestly showed the maturity level of the Republican Party that MAGA has shanghaied versus the Democrat Party of President Biden. Now, when Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke out against President Biden did not have her removed from Congress. He basically took it in stride. He did acknowledge her at points and times, but it showed the maturity level of the Democrat president versus Donald Trump. It actually shows the maturity level of all presidents compared to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has to be the worst and most immature president to ever serve as President of the United States. He has taken great strides to acknowledge that he is the perfect man to his MAGA base, when in fact he is the worst president this country has ever seen. Now, many of us do not remember the days of Warren G. Harding or Andrew Jackson or even James Garfield, but they are classified as some of the worst presidents to ever serve as President of the United States. Now, Donald Trump said there's absolutely nothing he can say that will make Democrat lawmakers happy, which quite honestly is true to a degree. But there's a lot of things that he can do that can make America happy, and that is resign. Quite honestly, a convicted felon who is also an adjudicated rapist, who is also an accused child predator, must, in fact, step down, but he won't because his ego is fractured. And as I have stated in several other posts on social media, such as TikTok, Donald Trump has an ego problem and needs to retaliate against America because the problem is America has been going after him because he is a lifelong criminal. Donald Trump thinks he is not a criminal and thinks he is perfect in every way, shape, or form. Much to the chagrin of Donald Trump, he is very much a racist, especially at the end of his speech where he mentioned he is going to bring America into the golden age. He touted about making this country the wealthiest there is, even though the Republicans are talking about adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. Now, this golden age he's talking about is about the golden age of pre-civil rights era, the Jim Crow days of yesterday, where minorities were not allowed to get a fair shake. Point blank, he removed DEI policy from the federal government. Many businesses such as Walmart and Target have removed their DEI policies, trying to say that they're going to hire only those qualified for their positions. But how can we actually say that these companies are going to follow Donald Trump's footsteps when Donald Trump himself is not putting the most qualified people in cabinet positions? Positions such as Kash Patel, who is not an FBI agent, never has been, never was. By Kash Patel's own words, where he served at about 12 years in federal government, that anyone who serves in the federal government is qualified to be the FBI director. Well, if that's the case, then my 9 years of military service, combined with copious amounts of time in federal civilian positions, qualifies me to be the director of the FBI as well. And what about Pete Hegseth, the Jaffer, who is now the Secretary of Defense, a reservist who served for just a few years? Now, his entire active duty time doesn't even rank to the time that I spent in basic training and in tech school in the United States Air Force. Now, to give a little bit of time frame of that period, I spent 6 weeks in basic training and then an additional 4.5 months in tech school learning a job that I proceeded to do in my time in the United States Air Force as an aircraft mechanic. And what about Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old blonde beauty queen, who happens to be nothing more than Kylie McEnary 2.0, a compulsive liar who is trying to dazzle the reporters in the room with her so-called beauty? Or what about Robert Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, a man that opposes vaccinations, a man that opposes health, a man that is the epitome of drug abuse, substance abuse, addiction, a man that tortured animals, as stated by his cousin, Carolyn Kennedy. Now, she had done a video prior to his confirmation in great detail addressing Congress how much of a repulsive person her own cousin is. She stated details about the fact of when growing up, his pad was the party pad amongst his friends and relatives. It has truly become a sad day in politics when Donald Trump, a complete nobody in the political world, comes out and becomes the face of American politics over the long-standing time of the Kennedy family. But that is what he used, was the Kennedy name, in order to obtain great distance in his administration. Now, another thing that Donald Trump had stated was that he inherited an inflation nightmare, saying that he blames President Biden for the high egg prices, when in fact that is categorically false, because over the course of the past month, the egg prices continued to skyrocket under his administration. Donald Trump stated during his campaign that on day one, he will lower grocery prices. He will make America great. prosperous and all that other good stuff. But the problem is, day one came, the first thing he was worried about was signing the executive order that denounces the weaponization of the federal government against him. But he, in fact, weaponized the federal government against his political opponents. He even signed an executive order denouncing the procurement and forced use of paper straws. Now, the other thing that Donald Trump touted about in his speech was the gold card citizenship. Selling a gold card for citizenship at $5 million to anyone that wants to come here to the United States. This, in fact, is another violation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that allows anyone who wants to prosper and find liberties here in a new country the right to come here. And in most situations, Donald Trump is trying to take the working class, the middle class, the lower class, and eliminate those classes and have nothing but elites here in this country. Now, the next section I find appalling. As someone who is from Detroit, Michigan, Donald Trump said he wants to make tax deductibles for American-made cars. Now, as a person who family has worked in the automotive industry in all three major companies, such as Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors, and have watched them get laid off during the 1980s under the Reaganomics era, we noticed in 1980 a huge shift in products coming here to the United States. We noticed that a lot of materials used to build cars came from cheaper regions of the world, such as Japan, China. And here in America, the steel industry went down in automotive sales. Ronald Reagan brought in the trade agreements with Japan and with the European nations that develop cars, such as BMW, Volkswagen, and then on the other side, Toyota, Suzuki, Nissan, bringing those trade cars in at cheaper rates than American-made cars. The American automotive industry was still using steel at the time to build their cars, while the other companies were using fiberglass to build theirs. Now, since that point in time, the American auto companies have in fact gone to fiberglass in the building of their cars, thus denouncing a lot of the safety that steel had provided in head-on collisions. But that opened a door for other companies to come in with safety equipment such as airbags, seatbelts, sensors, computers, all that stuff in order to make cars safer to drive. But sadly, that is only just part of the issues that we have here in America. When you have aggressive drivers, such as over-the-road truck drivers, who are on drugs, many of which don't care about local laws, many of them don't understand the local laws, the safety procedures from these cars is still the biggest death here in America on the roads. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump also denounced President Reagan and his government policies that he had, saying that they were horrible for our country. Yes and no. Some of them was good for the country. A lot of them was not good for the country. Most of what Reagan did for the economy was help build the military complex to help stop the war with the Soviet Union, aka Russia. President Reagan developed the Star Wars program to help deter a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And this is why Donald Trump is trying to criticize and denounce President Reagan, because Donald Trump is buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin and willing to give our national secrets to Putin. And after I criticized Donald Trump's Iron Dome, even though I know he did not see my podcast, but the fact that many people have criticized his Iron Dome executive order, last night at his speech, he now announced his Golden Dome. Now, the Iron Dome that Donald Trump was wanting to establish was an actual materialistic dome over the United States. But in hindsight, the Iron Dome was actually used by Israel, and he then changed it to the Golden Dome, which is similar to the Israeli defense, in which it is a list of satellites and radar that is to prevent missiles from coming here in the United States, such as what the Star Wars project was. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump has a fixation with gold. I mean, after all, the man has a golden toilet in his residence. And Donald Trump wants to bring in the golden age for America. And when did Americans think that we had a golden time here in America? Pre-civil rights era, aka Jim Crow, when minorities were not allowed to have any civil liberties, any civil rights whatsoever. And Donald Trump denouncing trans care, trans rights, LGBTQ rights, minority rights, migrant rights. This is bringing in the new era of racism called MAGA. And with that being said, Donald Trump went on for an hour and 40 minutes of pure blubber, bullshit, and whatnot that many of us, real Americans, saw right through as him being the liar in chief that he is. Thank you for joining me today. Come back and join me on Monday as we get back on the regular schedule for the Social Pit podcast. I am Ski. Thank you and have a good day.